Yeah, so, timber. So me and my friends, we were walking out. It was late at night. We just drove all the way over to the pier because, stupidly enough, we all decided that we wanted to go fishing that day. But throughout the entire morning, like it had been raining constantly, and we kept on pushing the date back further and further. Eventually, it came onto this day, and even on this day, it still rained in the morning. So eventually, we said, "Fuck it." We decided to go and fish at night. Luckily, as soon as the sun fell down to the sky, the rain stopped as well. So we went and we drove down to the pier. As we got out, we thought it was strange. Like, even at night, usually the pier would have some people there, but the entire parking lot was empty. No one was there. We got out our fishing gear from the back of the trunk, and then I felt a cool breeze and a chill down my spine. I looked around, and the other guys didn't feel anything apparently. It was just me. So we went and we walked up the stairs to get to the top of the pier. It was pretty tall. It used to be smaller, but it got wrecked when the hurricane came by in the past, and it flooded the entire pier out. So they both raised it up higher and strengthened the wood. So we have to climb up a set of stairs now to get to the top. And as we got, it was like with every footstep we made, the wood planks of the stairs creaked for more and more. One of them, I swore, even squealed like a pig. But eventually we got to the top, and we walked over to the edge. As I was walking through, I looked at some of the closed down and empty stalls, and I thought to myself, it was really weird, because some of the stalls weren't even closed down properly, and they've got like their stuffed animals and other stuff that they would sell in the morning just out, like easy pickings for any common thief. But they ignored it, and so did I, and we just kept on walking. Eventually, we got to the end of the pier, and one by one, we each went and we casted out our lines into the ocean. So we began to shoot the shit, and my friend went over and got one of the old grills and and got out his lighter and tried to light it up. But every single time he tried to get a light and brighten up the area around us, this random breeze would come through and just whip out his flame. Eventually, my friend gave up, and he just put his lighter away and put the grill back where it used to be. And we continued to fish. We kept on talking and talking, and it felt like, for what felt like hours, but had probably only been around a couple minutes. And wouldn't you know it, I got a bite. I gave it a second, and then I began reeling in. I reeled and I reeled, but then I noticed something felt off. I kept on reeling, but it didn't feel like the fish was giving any tension. It wasn't trying to run away. In fact, it kind of felt like the fish was going towards me and with me as I pulled in. I then thought, damn, like I probably picked up some garbage in the water or something. So I went and I reeled in slowly now. I reeled in slower and slower and slower, because I felt it. There was no tension in the line. Eventually, I went, and just as I looked down, I saw there was something in the water. It was almost glowing. Out of the water came bursting a giant whale, iridescent and glowing, as if covered in bioluminescent moss. The whale was gigantic. It went and jumped out of the water and splashed back down. Like, the pier was pretty massive, and as I mentioned, the shit was increased in height to water out storms. This whale was easily twice as tall as the pier. We all freaked out, and then I felt it. The line, it was being pulled. I then went and I tried to grab some scissors because I didn't want to lose my rod. And I went and I cut the line, just in time, as I felt that the drag finally let go. We all just stood there in shock. And then, as soon as the whale went and swam into the depths, we started hearing talking, and then suddenly a bright flash. We all just stopped and we looked around, and we realized we were at the end of the pier. But now all of the lights were lit. People were at the stalls. People were mulling about. It had been given life. Looking around really confused, my friend Jonathan walked over to one of the fishermen that was near us and asked if he saw the whale. And he looked at him and he was very confused and he said, "What are you guys talking about? You've just been standing here this whole time." It's like, "Yeah, you walked in here about like 4 hours ago. Like, you were just staring out into the ocean. You weren't even doing anything. Pretty fucking weird. You guys tripping out or something? You on drugs? It's like giant whale. Never heard of it." To this day, me and my friends have never talked about the whale. We simply wonder what happened that night. Wondering if maybe the reason the storms came every morning to make us not fish was to avoid us getting killed by it.
So, me and my friends were headed off to the pier in the dark of night. Now, you might be wondering, why would anyone go fishing, especially on a pier, at the dead of night? And the truth is, me and my friends have been planning this trip to go out to the pier together, to fish together for months now. But every single time, for some reason, whenever we tried to go out, a storm would appear and not allow us to go. It would ruin any times we would try. And so, month by month, we kept setting it back, day by day. And we even tried changing days randomly, to see if that would change anything, but no. Despite any forecast, it would rain on the day. So eventually we gave up. We said, fuck it. Next time, we'll just wait. And if it stops raining at night, we'll go then. And so, tonight was the night. Just like the other nights, it rained in the morning. But just like the other nights, it cleared out by the time the sun set. We drove on the way. We were all in pretty good spirits, in high spirits, talking with each other. Though everything was rather honestly quiet outside, and despite the fact we kept on driving, we hadn't seen a single other car. So we drove, and eventually we reached the pier. We parked the car and we got out, and that's when I noticed it again. Like everyone else noticed it as well. Despite the pier being in the middle of the night, you'd normally see at least one or two cars parked out, some other like midnight fishermen going out, but the parking lot was completely empty. No one was there. I got up my phone and made sure to checked on it and made sure that this was the proper time if we were allowed to go, if some kind of damage or disaster had happened to the bridge. But no, my phone said the bridge was perfectly fine, and that it's perfectly fine and available to the public. We shrugged our shoulders and guessed, maybe we'll see someone in an hour or two. We then went and we started to go up the steps of the pier. The pier was actually larger than most. In fact, some would say it was scarily large, doubled in height, and had more lumber underneath than most. The reason for this was the pier had actually previously been destroyed by something. From what we were told, it was destroyed by a freak by the hurricane that went through. The entire thing was demolished. And so they went and they redoubled it, both in size and in scale, allowing both for better commerce, and so that it would survive another storm if it should happen. We then we continued to walk over. We started climbing the steps. Each wooden floorboard creaked louder than the rest. Creak, 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 creak. But just as I stepped on the last one, it almost sounded like a shrill howl came out. I panicked, and I got bunched up for a second. My friends began to laugh at me, thinking it was funny. Despite the fact that when I stepped on it, it howled quite loudly. My friends, as they walked up, they made no noise at all. So, we started to continue. We went and we started walking down to the end of the pier so we could start fishing. And that's when I noticed another thing. Like, we went by stand and stall, and for some reason, a lot of the stalls weren't closed down properly. Even some of the booths that had like plush toys and other games were just left open. They weren't shut down, no metal sheets, no locks. They really just leave this stuff out in the open? Free for any person with some loose fingers to steal? I thought about it for a second, and one of my friends even considered going and taking some of the stuff. I told him not to. Like, despite the way the pier looks, it actually does have a camera system, and so they'll have you recorded. I'd rather not screw. I'd rather not anger the piermen if we were doing this. So we kept walking further and further, and I noticed it again. Like, none of the lights were on. All the power was out. Not even any of the oil drums where fishermen would fill with some firewood was lit. Found this to be a bit annoying as it was a bit hard to look as we walked. Eventually we made it to the end of the pier. We then got ready and set up our rods and our gear, and we began throwing out our lines. The sky was rather ominous gray. The horizon seemed to go on forever. Well, that's the ocean for you. You can't really ever see the end. I took a look at the water, and it looked black, murky almost. Normally, when I look at it on a bright, clear day, it's rather blue and clear. But even now, it looks dirtier than normal. My other friend went over to one of the bins and to one of the what's it called, barrels, and got the thing. He got out his lighter and tried lighting some of the wood that was already inside of it. But no matter how many times he tried to light it, a freak gust of wind came out of nowhere and just blew it out. He attempted 9 lights, and eventually he just gave up, and he put the barrel back to where it was and said, "I guess that's why none of them are lit. These fucking freak gusts of wind keep on knocking the flame out. You can't get a light." Each, we were fine with this though. My friend had brought a flashlight and I had brought a headlamp, which is how we were able to get to here, though it was still really dark. We had been fishing and talking for what seemed like a few minutes, but honestly, with no sense of real time, it could have been anywhere between 2 hours to 20 minutes. Either way, we were enjoying ourselves, despite the strange conditions. But then, I heard something. Almost an ominous wailing. I looked down into the ocean. I don't know how me and my friends missed it. The ocean was covered in pure bright iridescent algae, and it turned into glowing patches of green. My friends then looked out and said, "Whoa, what the fuck?" Because it wasn't there a second ago. And then I saw something. In each of the glowing patches of green light, I saw a shadow. It swam between them, going through to and fro. It was hard to make it out what it was, but whatever it was gigantic. I then got a bite on my line. I freaked out. I attempted to pull it, but nothing happened. It just stayed. And then I began pulling it more, and then it started to come. I began to reel it in, but then I noticed it. I wasn't reeling it in anymore. As I cranked it, I could feel it. Whatever was on the other end was headed straight for me. I began reeling it in quicker, thinking that maybe I had snagged my line on some kind of garbage, some old bike or something that had fallen into the ocean at some point. Whatever it was, it didn't feel like a fish, and it was coming straight at us. It was coming with the line. No normal fish would do that. No animal, at least. We began reeling it in harder and harder, and then we noticed it. The thing underwater was following my line. I stopped reeling in for a second, and waited, and then I saw it. It kept going. And with it, I felt I could see my line getting dragged closer and closer. Me and my friends looked at it and wondered, what the hell is that? Then it emerged, blasting out of the surf in the glowing green water. A giant whale, bigger than anything we had ever seen before, burst out. The waves itself were massive as it came out of the water. The thing was huge. Not many people would believe it, but it was the size of the damn pier. The whole thing. Where had this giant creature come from? A leviathan? And it was hurtling straight towards us. All we could give was a muffled scream as the waves took us over and the whale crashed down above us. As the water cleared, I blinked slowly and looked around my eyes. It was daylight? I'm on the beach, and then I looked over and realized that someone was holding me and calling out to me and asked if I was okay. I looked around and I saw my friends. They're each strewn out on the beach. I asked him what happened, and he said, "Didn't you hear? There was a massive hurricane last night. The entire pier got blown off. And you guys were we were told you went out fishing that night, and we've been looking for you. You guys just washed up on the beach." I looked around, thinking back on what happened, and then I remembered the whale. What about the giant whale? That thing was huge. It destroyed the entire pier. And he said, "Giant whale? No, it was a hurricane. It was huge. It hit the entire coast." I later asked my friends about that day, but apparently I'm the only one who ever remembered seeing the whale. And when I ask about it, they only talk about a hurricane and how they barely made it.